Learning Avlat Gemara. Today's daf. This is a Friday. Is daf Ayin base. Okay, we're up to the Gemara here. Some interesting cases. We're still talking about obviously about wine, and we were talking about buying and selling of a yid sells to a guy and so on. So here's some interesting cases. Five lines from the top of the page. Ahu Gabra, the person, the Chabri said to his friend, if I ever plan to sell this property, I'm going to sell it to you. Gave him his word. And then Ozil Zavnil he went and sold somebody else. The question is, can the person say, yeah, you promised me the land? This happens quite often. Rabbi Yosef said the first guy is the owner. Abai said, what do you mean the first guy is the owner? You didn't work out a price yet. Because you didn't work out a price, you think the guy really was definitely going to buy it. Maybe if he heard that you want an exorbitant amount of money, he never would have taken it. How do I know that if you don't work out a price, then there's no real confidence in the purchase? If you didn't work out a price, you're not really koine. We learned. In our Mishnah, clearly, a Mashiach, we said if you take something metalplin and you draw it to yourself or you lift it, it becomes yours. But if you lifted it before you worked out a price, the Mashiach is not kind of because you thought, you're not 100% sure you're going to take it because what happens if he asks for a crazy price? If you made up a price, before he actually took it, then Dama Matarin. So therefore, when he made the Mashiach, right away he confirmed that he was going to buy it. And at that moment, at that juncture, it wasn't yet Yain Nesach, so therefore he's paying you money for what he owes you. But mother actually, if he didn't make up a price and the guy took it, lifted it, or took it and made a mashiach, then and Dama Vasuri. Why? Because at that time it was still the Eid was still the balabas. And then the guy touched it because as long as you didn't work out a price, it's not yet confirmed. My Havilah, what's the bottom line? So he said, My Havilah, you know what I mean? He just said. Moshe said, no, what I meant was maybe that mission is not really a proof. You know why it's not really a proof? Because Dilma, Humra, we're trying to draw a parallel from Yain Nesach to a case of property. Maybe Humra the Yain Nesach shiny. Maybe over there is different because Yain Nesach were so stringent, so therefore we say it's not clean. But over here, in the case you promised the guy a property, even though if he didn't make up a price, maybe it doesn't maybe it's nothing. So we don't know. Nevertheless, Rav Dimi Paskin that the first guy is kind. We're talking about a case here where a guy was told the guy, if I ever sell this property, I'm going to give it to you. On the Poyo, he sold it to somebody else. The guy came with a tainer. So Rav Dimi says the first guy is kind because he promised him the property, so he has to give it to the first guy. And the Abai says, why? Since you didn't make up a price, even though the guy was agreeable, we had in the Mishnah. And the closed man was no pasak, he didn't make up a price. The King Mashiach didn't do anything. So Abai said, but maybe that's only Avodah Zarah. Maybe because the Ainesach were more machman. I know when it comes to commercial property that if he didn't make up a price, there's no kinyan at all whatsoever. Says the Gemara, back to the Gemara Toshma coming here. Let's work this out. We're talking about that they made it. By the way, when he made him a promise, we're talking about he made a kinyan. If he stopped made a promise, then we have we had the whole Gemara and Hazab about if you said something to somebody with no kinyan, if not mishapara but the mechusar amana, like Rav said over there, that you're not an honest person. Here we're talking about you made a kinyan. Is the kinyan a valid kinyan because you didn't work out a price? That's the question. There's a story that in Yeshiva Rav Chizda went to the Yeshiva Rav Huna, Pashtin, they sat down together and they resolved this question. This very question, we learned in a Braisa, Moshach Chamarav Upoyalav. Let's say there was servants who were carrying fruits. And you wanted to buy the fruits. So what happens if Moshach, you made a Mashiach on Chamarav, on the people who were, pulling the donkey, and the fruits were on the donkey, or Upoyalav, so we're talking about a case over here where a guy wanted kind of the fruits. The fruit, he buying fruits, but the fruits were sitting on top of a donkey or on top of the shoulders of the slave of the person you're buying it from. And you made a Mashiach on them. You pulled them over towards you. You took these people with the fruits on their shoulders and brought them into the house. Is Bain Pasak actually whether you whether you work out a price before you pull these people into your house. They modded actually possible when you pull them in your house before you made a price. Either way, like you are not koina. Why aren't you koina? Because how are you going to be koina? You didn't do a Mashiach on the fruits. You did a Mashiach on the people. And Mashiach on people is no such kinyan. So therefore, how are you kind of fruits? What kinyan did you make of it? So the fact whether there was a price or there wasn't a price wouldn't have made much of a difference. However, both of them can change their mind because there's no yet set. You didn't make a complete acquisition. But what happens? You took them off. You took them off the shoulders of these people. And then the Hechnisa, basically brought them into the house. Okay, you brought the fruits not physically, so you did the Mashiach. So the question is it a kinyan or not? Now, why is that a question? The question is because did you work out a price or didn't you work out a price? Because if you did work out a price, then the Mashiach is a valid kinyan. Because you definitely want it. But if you didn't work out a price, even though you made a Mashiach, who says you really want it? Maybe he'll charge you an astronomical sum and you'll walk away. And what are we talking about here? We're not talking about Avodah Zarah. We're talking about regular kinyanim. So that proves that even by regular kinyanim, you have to work out a price before we say the kinyan. No, but you have to be. It's not just the ma'aseh kinyan, also the kavana. And the kavana is very important. In fact, in the Achreinim, the big machlekes, there's two ways of understanding that kavana is important. But is the pshat the ma'aseh kinyan is what makes it yours? The kavana is only to tell us what your ma'aseh is. That this was my purpose to make it mine. Well, the other way around. What really makes it mine is the kavanah. Or is a ma'isa giladas on the kavanah. Really, the kavanah is what makes the transaction. The transference. But machshava is nothing. So how do we know what your machshava is? So the ma'isa is proving up your machshava. And big enough communities the halacha. But regardless, the pasak, if you make up a price, then we know what you mean. We know that you're sincere. If you didn't work out a price, we're not sure. We don't know if you really want it because you might change your mind. So it says here, Pasak actually mother if you worked at the price before you put in the house, they can't change your mind. Mother actually Pasak, but if you did a Mashiach before you worked at a price, then you're going to. And what do we see here? What are we talking about? Normal commercial transactions. So therefore, that proves that even normal commercial transactions, then you have to be able to, in order for the kinyan to be a kinyan, you have to work out a price. So not like Rabbi Yosef said. Who was a person? Now we're talking about cases about buying and selling, so we can learn the following. We're digressing. Who was a person? The mayor Zuzah. Oh, sorry, this is actually a follow-up case to this one. Similar to the first case here, but Reuben said to Shimon, if I ever sell this land, I'm going to sell it to you for $100. And then we made a kinyan. Okay. The kinyan, it doesn't make it yours because I'm not selling it yet. But if I ever decide to sell it, you're what's the word called? You have first right of refusal. Your first right of and we name the price $100. Lepoil, he got an offer for more than that. So Ozil he got an offer for 120, and he sold the guy 120. I'm gonna have the same thing. The first guy, and here you worked out a price. In the first story here, on top of Rabbi Yosef, you didn't work out a price, but here you worked out a price, and you made a kinyan. What's it talk about? No. When he was offered $100, he didn't sell it. As soon as he got an offer 120, he sold it. What does that prove? That he's desperate for money. It's the money that made him sell it. He's like a victim here. He's like a victim. He's not backtracking. At 100, he never would have sold it. He had no interest selling at 100. But he made a kinyan with you and he didn't give it to you. It's the money that he's desperate for, and 120 made it enough that he worked out that he needs that money and he'll solve all of those issues. So Mela, at 100 he still doesn't want to sell it. It's only 120 he wants to sell. So therefore he didn't really double cross or betray the person's confidence, whatever it is. It's a different story. It's the money that forced him. It's like a different situation. The and the law is actually like him. Okay, now we're talking about selling land. So we go a little bit of digression. If let's say they made up and said, look, he said, I'm going to sell you this property. But he said, what price? Wait, 30 people decide, get a value with 3 evaluators to come up with a price. So it doesn't mean that you need all 3 to agree on a uniform price. If 2 out of 3 say it's worth $1,000 and one other guy says it's worth 800, we'll follow the majority. Why? Because it's as if he said like a bezdin, and by bezdin that's how it works. You go after the majority. So it says Kidama Beit Loss. But if he says the words Kid Amri Bitlossa, if he changes it doesn't say Kid Shaimi Bitlossa like 3 says. He says like which means like a bezdin. What's the cheshbon of 3? Like a bezdin, and the rules of bezdin you follow majority. But what happens if it says Kid Amri Bitlossa, the way 3 people say, it's as if I'm saying I want all 3 to agree. Ad Amri Bitlossa until all 3 say and agree on a price, on a value. If he says Kiddushayim Baba, you just said before that when he says Kiddushayim Bitloss, it means like a bezdin, and therefore 2 out of 3. But if there's no bezdin, that's 4 people. And he said, I want Kiddushayim Baba. Why did you nominate 4? So even though he used the word Kiddushayim, it sounds from here, Ad Amri Baba. It's as if he's saying here, I'm not interested in bezdin. I want 4 people to agree on a price. Surely, if he says Kida Amri Baba, he wants all 4 people to agree. Malay says Kida Aimi, Kida Shaimi Bitlosa. What happened? I said, I made up with you 3 valuers, and you got 3 valuers, but also Tloss of Shemu. Came along 3 people, and they assessed it. All right, okay, which happens all the time. There's a buyer and a seller. So let's say the buyer got 3 got an evaluation done, but then the seller thinks that the valuation is too low. He said, I don't trust your evaluators. Sworn evaluations. I don't trust them. I want to bring my own evaluators. I want to see what he says. Question is, we made up a deal, get the evaluations, and you got the evaluations. Can he say, I want another evaluation? I'll bring my own. I want others. I think they're more experts. The Papa says, yes, he's entitled to say that. He's entitled to say, I don't trust your evaluators. I'm going to give my values. Ask a lot of he's like a thorn on a Papa's side. If a Papa says something, and Hulma is there to argue. And usually the halacha is very sure. The Mai the Hani Kimluhu Kvei. What kind of argument is that? Why are your evaluation better? It's just one evaluation. These are professionals. Why are you any better? Mahani Kum and all you're doing is trying to delay. You don't want to really sell it, so you're trying to hopefully delay the whole thing. The guy walk away from the whole deal. That's why else he's doing it. The Hilchos Kabbalah never sure. The Hilchos never sure. So the big machloek is the shining. What happens if the taka, the value that the vendor wants to get, are known to be better values? They come from a better college or whatever. The better. What happens then? Then it's not a delaying tactic. We would have 100% sure argue there as well or not. Machloek is the shining. Next mission. Remember talking about the Eid selling to a guy. So what happened is not to less a mashpich. The Eid took the mashpich is the funnel, and then he go ahead and pour wine into the jug of the guy. Because so first the Eid took his wine, kosher wine, and used the funnel to pour it into Yiddish wine. And modern, and then afterwards he took that same funnel, and the funnel didn't touch the wine at all. It just poured into the bottle of the guy. And then he took that same funnel and he poured, and he sold to Yid later that day, and he used the same funnel to go into his kosher wine to Yid. The question is there a problem there or not? So remember, it was a Yiddish bottle, whatever it was, a Yiddish flask, through a funnel into a Goyish jug. So there's no Indian here of touching, as we learned Pashup Shot, but rather pouring. It's called nitzik. Is nitzik in mechuber, so therefore that the wine on top also was attached to the wine below, and now all the wine became yain netzich, or the wine in the funnel. What's the story here? So the Mishnah says, not was a mashal model, he poured in a goyisher, then a model, then he went to Yiddish. In yesh boy akedes yain. If there's physically like little pieces sticking out inside the funnel, with it could trap some of the wine. So some of the wine can be trapped. So then when you take that same funnel, if you didn't wash it out, clean it and dry it, and you use it for your Yiddish jug, there's some leftover wine from what you poured into the Geisha jug. Then us. And the Gemara is going to ask the obvious question. Why should it be us? Any wine that's trapped in the funnel came from the Yiddish bottle. It didn't bounce back up from the Geisha bottle. So what's the problem? Let's say there is some wine there. And that's where the Nitzik and Mechuber comes into place. That's case, the first part of the mission. Next part of the mission is right now the Gemara, first Gemara thing, talking about a Yiddish person. Then we talk about a goy. Gemara concludes about a Goyish person who's pouring from your bottle, kosher wine, into a keli. into a keli. So goy is pouring your wine, and this is actually very important. That the and Moses Shem learns right. So if a guy picks up a bottle of wine, not mevushal, and he pours it into your cup, okay, you cannot drink the wine in your cup. What about the wine left over in the bottle? Is that wine also awesome? He poured the bottle, says kayach. What happens to the bottle that's in the wine left over in the original bottle?
They didn't touch the wine.
He shake it. He didn't touch the wine that goes in your glass either.
Didn't have when the guy pokes it with a lulav or a stick.
But that he touched the wine. Here he didn't touch the wine, but the wine in your cup is us. Right? This is it's us. What about the wine that's left in the original bottle? Hamada came again. The original bottle is mut. And that's why the Gemara thinks we're talking about a yid over here, not a goy. For the goy, the original bottle is also us. Come on, yid, and we'll see what happens. Over there, it says over there when it comes to Tumah V'Tada, let's say you have water that's nitzak, that's pouring into say a boil, or haketafris, it's all wet there on the slope. Or and it's wet enough that if you put your hand there, you'll get wet. But it's not wet enough that if your hand then goes somewhere else, it's not tefeach, it's only tefeach. So you put your hand there, it's obviously wet. But it's not that wet. No, it's not that much water there that if you then take your hand and you put it somewhere else, you can make something else wet. It's not tefeach, it's just tefeach. That water is not considered connected. Let's say whatever you're coming to is tamei. It's not going to become, this water not become tamei. It's not considered connected. Or if you have a mikveh that's less than 40 saw, if you add the water here, you make it 40 saw, it doesn't connect. But if you have, let's say, an ishbaiden, which is just like cracks in the ground, and then the water fills up in those cracks. If a person filled up with water or it came from beneath the ground, is everything in there, all the cracks and all the crevices there, all the water combines. What do we see from here? That nitzik ukatafris umashke tefeh chibul in yain eser. When it comes to yain eser, nitzik is mechubel. Nitzik is mechuber. So if you're flowing the water atop the water below, all connects. How do you know this? Nitzik is mechuber. In fact, there's a machlekes. Nitzik connects the top of the bottom or not. Is your eye from here? But it's not. It says in the Mishnah, it's not considered chibur. It seems from here, only regarding tumah and tara, it's not considered connected. Regarding that's your ayah. That yain is connected. Amo safer than if you're not your diuk. Look at this end of the brisa in the Mishnah. Only that ashbayden is only a chibur for tumatara. The tumatara chibur only nine is lava chibur. So you can't learn a law like a mamish. You can't make an ayah. The Mishnah is just focusing on tumatara. It doesn't mean to negate anything else or not. Okay, so now we learn Notal has a mashpe. This is not Mishnah. You took the mashpe and you poured it into a guy's jug, and then the took a jug. Yes, boy, so there's a little piece there that holds back some of the wine that the yid was pouring from his bottle into the guy's bottle. It's us. Now let's understand. Why should this little bit of wine be us? Why should it be us? It's Yiddish wine that never entered the keli of the jug of the guy. No, boss, must be benitzer. Because while you're pouring it into the keli of the jug, the funnel is inside the bottle thing. So the wine that falls into the is falling into the bottle is connected is connected to the wine that's inside the funnel, and it's mechuber, and that's why all the wine that's inside the funnel, if any wine is left trapped inside the funnel, it's asa. That's the raya. That nitzik when it comes to yain nesik is kibbutz. Tani Rabchi, what's the question? Rabchi said no. Rabchi learned pshat in this Mishnah. He learned pshat as a brisa, and he learned pshat in our Mishnah. You know what happened there? He says that the jug of the goya and the bottom got you put so much wine in it without realizing it, that the wine overflowed and some of the wine of the goya's bottle entered the funnel. In fakech, so from here that nitzik is not kimechuber. And the only reason why it's usher inside the funnel is because it was touching or overflowed. If it would have happened, my life. So let's bring an eye for Rabchia, the nitzik ain't a chibur. That he doesn't rely on nitzik. He has to come up with this idea of overflowing. So you want to know? Maybe life, no, because is a given. Rabchia is saying if it overflows, no question. Nitzik to buy. I'm not sure what the din would be if it didn't overflow, just nitzik, and it doesn't pass in one way or another. Toshma, come in here. Amar, and since our Mishnah doesn't qualify it, so from our Mishnah would seem that Nitzik is Mechubin. That's why any wine trapped in that funnels us. Toshma coming in for the next part of the Mishnah. Amar, Mikeli, Likeli, if you pour it from one case to another, Shemar, menu, where it's coming from is mutter. Right now we think it's a guy doing it. So what you menu for the bottle that the wine came from is mutter. And the wine that's at the bottom is awesome. What about the actual? What about the wine that is in the air? You have a bottle at the top, you have the bottle on the bottom, and then you have the wine in the air. What about the wine in the air? The wine in the air is l'chayda nitzik, right? It didn't touch the bottle, the bottle on the bottom. It's only the flow is connected. It seems it's the Mishnah says only what the wine that's left in the original bottle is mutter, mashma, but the wine in between in the air is aser. Isn't that a raya that nitzik is mechuber? Says the Gemara, no. If you're going to learn that way, then why stop at the air? What about the bottle itself? It's all flowing. So you have the bottle, you have the air, and you have the bottle on the bottom. If you're going to tell me that nitzik in mechuber, and so where's the wine in the air coming from? From the bottle on top, and you still have wine in the original bottle while there's wine in the air, and there's wine that entered the goyish bottle. So if you're going to believe nitzik in mechuber, then the original bottle should also be awesome. I feel the more shouldn't that be us as well? Following your logic. Well, that's not right. Holy kasha, that's not a problem. Why? You know why? The komaktiv kitufe. And the way Rashi learns is
flow is interrupted.
Exactly. That you only do a little bit at a time. So by the time the water hits the bottom, the jug and the guy in the bottom, there's no flow coming out of the bottle on top. So there's no nitzik to the wine in the bottle on top because you interrupt, you stop, you do spurts at a time. But the wine in the air is connected to the wine into the bottle, and it seems from here that that's awesome. So nitzik mechuber. That's what I want to say. For his raya nitzik mechuber. That's what I want to say. According to you, if that's your diuk, let's look at the next part of the Mishnah. But it says, what does the Mishnah say? What part of the wine is aser? Only would enter the goyish bottle on the bottom. Seems like the wine in the air is permitted. Following your diuk, make the same diuk. Our Mishnah is not out to tell you what the din is regarding the wine in the air. No, one way or another. Tashma coming here, okay. It says Hama'ad in a Braisa, Hama'ad mechavis leboid. If somebody's pouring from a barrel, leboid into a big cistern, kiluach hayoyed misvas chavis lemata oser. The kiluach, the flow that goes from the edge of the barrel towards the boid is all oser. Sounds clear from here that the flow is oser even before it enters the boid because it's nitzik mechuber. Says the Gemara. Targuma Rav Sheshes Darshan. We're not talking about a yid over here. You thought we're talking about a yid. You thought we're talking about a yid here, and therefore you said that the problem is eating. A yiddish wine is kosher. What's the problem? The problem is kiluach and the nitzuk. It's talking about oiv gechavim here. That's the problem. Don't do nitzuk. It's a goy. No boss. Hama'ara. The Asi Mekoi Chai, because the guy, and we learned before, a guy is touching, but it's also the abominable guy is if the guy even doesn't touch, if it's his force, therefore it's Asa. Says the Gemara, if the guy is pouring the wine, why is the wine that's left in the original bottle mutter? Then I feel shouldn't the wine original bottle of the barrel should be Asa? Says the Gemara, the whole idea that a guy, remember, if a guy touched it, but if a guy is what do you call it? Is just we said maga, even if you don't stir it, is awesome. But if a guy just pouring it, it's only his force. It's koyach. Novas, Rabbanu Geyser, that koyach is also awesome. So when was Rabbanu Geyser? How the nafig lebroy, anything which his force had a shaykhs to Gazer Be Rabbanim. The Rabbanim decreed. Ahuda legavoy. Like God's abundant, your force didn't achieve anything with what's inside the bottle. So therefore, it's as if your force is not there, and the abundant were not geyser on the contents of the bottle. But interesting, comes out from here, as Taisa says, another Rishonim, that the goy pours the bottle, not in the bushel. It's a big, you cannot drink the wine in the glass, but the wine that there is a bottle, you have to throw out. It's still good. To these wine sellers, when you pour wine to a guy, you know what the best thing is? Don't get involved in nitzuk. Kitufi. Don't do it all in one flow. do bits and pieces, drip and drip. So therefore, there's no shilas about nitzik and mechuber or not, because there's a machlekes. Don't get involved. Or inami, the throw it from a distance. Throw it up in the air, then it goes down. So it's not like there's no kiluach. It's not like a flow. A kiluach is only top and bottom.
Light that comes detached from the ocean.
If it's we're talking about if it's detached by me'elav, we're talking about you cannot and you worship for Avodah Zarah. Yeah, no, that's exactly. The question is, if you then worship in Avodah Zarah, it's still considered like is the word because there's no ma'aseh the adam in there, or is the word because it's mechuber? If it's ma'aseh, the reason why a mountain, because there's no human invention, there's no human here either. But if it's because mechuber, then it's not mechuber anymore. You could make it Avodah Zarah. Different thing here. It's not al koyach. They actually worship Avodah Zarah. Different. You say, why? Don't let a guy help you pour the wine. Why? What happens? You get tired or you forget, whatever it is. And then he does all the pouring. And then the pouring comes from him. But he'll ask the wine that flows out of the bottle. Who got the person? There's a person that took wine, begishta ubas gishta. This is interesting. Like people used to steal. I don't know if you remember. People used to steal petrol from people's cars, gas from people's cars. They would suck it out, put a pipe in. So here, what you did was you have a big barrel full of wine, and you have a small barrel next to it on the table. So you put in a straw. Like one straw goes up, then you have another straw connecting it that goes like a V, upside down V, and goes the other way. And then you give it. First, you suck the wine, you draw the wine to your mouth, and then you just let it continue on its own. So he says over here. That's called a gishta and a bas gishta. You have one tube, one straw, and then you have another, the bas, the extension. The guy then put his hand on the gishta to take away the air, whatever it is, to help out. Not only did he ask the wine in the straw, but the wine in the straw was connected to the wine in the barrel, so he asked everything. Amla Papa Rabbe, Amla other said about Masla Rabbe, Amla said Abin Rabbe, B'mai, B'nitzik. So what are you being machma here? How is it connected to the rest of the barrel? Because of nitzik. Because it's the flow. The straw, is one flow with the barrel. You want to say that what the nitzik is like mechuber because we're having a whole shakvataya here. The shiny hasam, there's different. The kula chamra agishta bazgishta. This is not a question of nitzik. Here, if you do nothing, the entire contents of the big barrel is going to end up in the other barrel on the other side. So therefore, it's taka attached. Normal nitzuk, there's no connection really between the bottom, the wine that's on the bottom and the wine on top. But because nitzuk, the flow makes it connected. Here, it's taka all going to end up there. So when the guy touches it, it's all connected, all the wine connected. He said, now Knishki was very interesting. We never allow that today. You have like this big punch bowl, and then you have a bunch of straws, and everyone drinks at the same time from the thing. Yeah. But the whole Gemara Masechta Shabbos that talks about a Pinishkin, if you're allowed to have it today, because after the Churma Bayis, now it'll be too much of a simcha. And here, everybody's happy, we're all drinking from the same punch bowl, the alcohol, whatever it is. But here we're talking about as far as Avodah Zarah is. If it goes one way, each guy takes whatever they draw out. Fine. Now, eat is no problem. The problem is, as the Gemara will say, if the guy stops first and then whatever wine he didn't drink that was flowing up the straw and that goes back in, now it gets mixed up. So he's eat allowed to drink it or not. So he says as follows: Kinishki Shari, the Kodem Pasuk Yisrael. If the Yid stops drinking before the guy, because if the guy stops first, then his wine flow back in and you're drinking a yain. But if you stop first, no problem. Kodem, you drawing it out. I will Kodem Pasuk Yisrael. No. So the question is, how can the Chatchilim do it? How do you know who's going to stop first? Unless you're looking the whole time to see when he's about to stop. He allowed them to drink Knishkin. And Teshuvah finds that impossible. Teshuvah says it's impossible because when he put himself in a situation that what happened to the guy stop before him? And then he's drinking Stam Yainim or whatever. It's possible. So Tei says what happened with him was it was a question of Simcha after Churban Bayis, and he wanted to show that a lot of people Simcha after Churban Bayis. Remember, had to go more Bobasta. They wanted to ask them meat. They wanted to ask everything. So he wanted to show the mutter. But we use that story here. We'll go to the bottom of the page. Okay, we'll go to the bottom line Gimel for it. Yayin Nesach, also Yayin Nesach, even the minutest amount passes when if it's with other wine. You have kosher wine, a little bit of yayin nesach. But if it's min be'ena min, let's say wine with water, then the normal dinner of shishim comes along. Big machlekes are training. This tastes there, tastes a few places. Whether we apply the same rule by stam yayinim, only by real yayin nesach. Okay, yayin be'yayin, wine and wine, umayim be'mayim b'choshu, water and water, and this is taste of proof. Water can also be Avodah Zarah. If you literally took water and you poured it in front of Avodah Zarah, but there's no such gzeira stam mayim. You're not allowed to drink anybody's water. The water is only a problem if you know 100% that it was poured as yayin nesach. So it says Taisus. Just like when it comes to water, we're talking about real libation. So when it comes to wine, we're talking about real yayin nesach. But stam yainam is nothing to do with mashu. Stam yainam is only is bottled b'shishim. That's Taisus proof. Anyway, so if it's all the same min b'chosher, the minutest amount. Or beyayin, bimayim, umayim, beyayin is benoisa time, but wine and water and wine, that's ain't a minute. There we go according to the normal rules. Shishim or he loses its flavor. This is the rule. Min b'mini mashu, if it's the same kind mashu, so min benoisa time. Says the Gemara, it says, if hama'ara yayin nesach b'chavis leboy, if you pour in yayin nesach from a barrel into a cistern, so the barrel is much smaller than a cistern, and now you have yayin nesach, kosher wine in the bar, yayin nesach in this barrel, so l'chayda we said, also mashu. Comes a big chiddush. Afilu kol hayem kuli, it's all right, no problem. You know why? Rishon bottle. We have a rule called. That's right. We have how do you unplague him wine? So we say here, kama bottle, which means that every drop of when you're pouring from the yayin nesach into the big yayin, you have in the kosher wine, every first drop that comes in is right away bottled. You don't look at it. You don't say a lot of wine came in. Only a little bit of wine came in. When we say mutter, we don't mean allowed to drink it. You're not allowed to drink it. We just said also mashu. It means it's mutter b'hana. You're allowed to have a no. So what about our Mishnah? So we're saying mutter means mutter b'hana. You're not allowed to drink it because also mashu. So Mishnah yayin nesach also boys b'choshu. So also b'choshu. My love the konofel is really going to take it. No, we're talking about yayin nesach fell into a barrel of heter and it's all also. No, the konofel had tated the goy yisuda. What happened was the heter fell inside iser, and so therefore every kama bottle, every original drop of the heter is bottled to the big thing of yayin nesach. But the other way around, if the yayin nesach fell into the kosher wine, then the first drops are always bottled. It's always drop comes in. And when do we say that it's also if it's not drop? If it's a big barrel and you open the entire lid and you throw the whole thing inside. But if you're just pouring it like a normal pouring, which is a little bit at a time, then every little bit becomes bottled to this vast amount of wine that's inside the boil, as far as Hano is concerned. Change the whole shot in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, I don't care which one goes into what, right? The Mishnah doesn't make a difference. Comes along the Abdimi and comes along and says, no. It's only talking about if the Yayin Nesach was on the bottom and the permitted wine falls inside, then I don't care. Ultimately it'll be a lot of more permitted wine than it's all us. But if the asa wine is falling into a boy which kosher wine, then the asa wine is kama bottle. Every original bit of wine fell in his bottle, and therefore it's mutter b'hana. It says in the Mishnah, yayin b'mayim b'noisen tam. It says in the Mishnah, wine in water. All it is matter of shishim. It doesn't matter who fell. And look at the words. It sounds like which is the problem? Not the water, the wine. And it sounds like sounds like the wine, the iser fell into the heter. So when it talks about wine and wine, also the iser wine fell into the heter. And yet it says in the Mishnah, it's also you're telling me that kama bottle. My love, the konofel chamad isur l'mayda teda. Wine, in other words, the iser is what's falling in. Right, the konofel chamad teda l'mayda isur. We're talking about a case over here where the water was worship of Avodah Zarah, and the wine was a mutter, like I said, and therefore we say that that whatever kama bottle. But the other way around, if the Easter fell in the head, it's all mutter, as far as I know. But that question. It says if you tell me the water is Easter, that's what you're telling me. The water is Avodah Zarah. So let's continue the Mishnah. Sefer nami b'mayid esura, b'mayid esura. Uktani sefer, it says in the sefer, mayim b'yayin. If water fell into wine, is b'noisa tam. That the water of Isur fell into the wine, and according to you, we say kama bottle, it should be permitted, and yet it says b'noisa tam. But you still need bittul. According to you, there's no problem because the Easter that falls into the head, every first drop becomes bottle automatically, right? Oh, look, Abdimi, Kula Masnisin. No. You think that Mayim means the whole time Mayim Easter. No, the Mishnah is always saying that the head fell Easter. Whichever case you're looking at, whatever is falling in is the one is the one that is heter that fell in the Easter. That's why it's awesome. But if the Easter
bottle as it comes in,
exactly, but if the Easter would fall in the heter, it would be mutter. The nation, they could not Muhammad that Taylor might is the nation don't matter. The wine is mutter. And Sefer is talking about the Kanova Maida Taylor Chamis. Yosef by Yisrael Mechram, when Abischa by Yezi came to Mechram. Yeah, so each one we're talking about it's the head that's falling Easter. So don't think that we describe the water and the water is always the same. That's the view of Rabdimi. So Rabdimi comes along and says the name of Rabbi Yechon. We have so many times when people come and say Rabbi Yechon, and someone else comes along and says exactly the opposite in the name of Rabbi Yechon. So he learns that if the Isa falls in the Heter, we have a concept called Kama Botlu, Rishon Botlu. However, he said, if somebody pours yayin nesach mitzirtzur cotton from a small bottle, a narrow bottle, small bottle, the boyd into a boyd, I feel call a yam kula rishon bottle, we say that is bottle, but you know why? Because all it is tzirtzur cotton. Dafke tzirtzur cotton, like nofish amude. You don't have it's not a very small amount that comes out. Avochovis, but a barrel, the nofish amude is a big flow. No, we don't think it's kamakam bottle. So he's not disagreeing so much of Dimi, he's just limiting Rav Dimi's word. That this thing of kamakam bottle is not the way you understood. Yeah, you said even the chavis. There's not a chavis, only a tzitzikat, a smaller bottle. Okay. He said no. Yeah, sorry, he comes on new din now. We learned this in Tarubas when we were doing smicha, but then we're not talking about the Aynes, we're talking about Stam Yisrael. We have a rule that say you have min, and min b'sheni min. Remember, we had those poskim who hold that min b'min is never bottled like Rabbi Yehuda. We say they reinforce each other. And so what happens if we have a min of Isser that fell inside a mixture of mina and eina mina? So there we say, imagine the mina is not there, imagine mina is not there, and then the eina mina will cancel the traits that fell in, and then there's no problem anymore. So do we apply that rule by Yayin Nesach as well? So he says the follows: Yayin Nesach shenafal leboy. If wine Yayin Nesach fell into a boy, the nafal sham kitin sham mayim. Now the boy was wine that's mutter, and the Yayin Nesach. Now we said before that Yayin Nesach falls into heter, it all becomes us. It came from a barrel, it all becomes us, right? And we're still going to prove not like that. All becomes us. And then, and we don't say what the source is. It could be from a bottle, it could be from a barrel. We don't say any source. Yain Nesach fell into a boil of heter. The din should be, I feel the mashu, show us. But then also, enough of some kittel shamayim, a jug of kosher water, of heter dick water came in. Now, so this we do. Royin is a heter kilo. Imagine that the kosher wine does not exist. Right? This is what we learned. So take away the minay. And what do you have left now? The kosher water and the tray and the yain nesach wine. So what we say is that if the water is more than the yayin nesach wine, we don't need the water to be more than the total amount of wine. Then the mixture, if it's more, then we cancel the yayin nesach and everything permitted. So what is she from here clearly? That we don't hold like Abdimi. According to Abdimi, the yayin nesach is not a problem either. Forget the water. According to Abdimi, we say kama bottle, the first wine that falls in the yayin nesach becomes bottle and becomes diluted, and no problem. The only reason why it's no problem is because you have the water here. Clearly, we don't paskin like Abdimi. And by the way, Rashi in Avodah Zarah, I told you, in this section of wine, there's not enough Rashis here. He misses a lot of Gemaras, but he does a lot of paskening, which also is not really
style of Rashi.
And here again, he paskins, and we have a machlekes on Abdimi. You have now Rovin. Seems to say Fakir.
So who is it? The number one of Rashi's Talmidim?
No, Rashi himself, but they say he's a wine merchant. He got really involved over here. You also have Shmuel Yehuda B'Yechon. Shmuel Yehuda came in B'Yechon. He said, "Lo Shanu." When do we say that? Elisha Nafal Kittel Shemayim Chila. If the kitten of Mayim fell in first, so therefore we'll say that afterwards the Yain fell in. We'll imagine that everything puts anyway. The Yain head is no longer there, and you do the whole cheshbon. Avaloi Nafal Sham Kittel Shemayim Chila. What happens if the kitten Mayim was not there first? In other words, if the water is the first, I mean the yain nesach fell in, it fell in and there was water there. So imagine the kosher wine is not there, and the yain nesach is diluted by the water. We imagine but if the yain nesach fell in first, joined the other wine, so they became now all awesome, and then the water fell in. Then we say no. Then you need to have shishim against the whole thing, against the kosher wine and the treif wine together combined. Because he say then matzah minas mina v'neir, that when the treif wine fell into kosher wine, there's no water there. They became one. Neir means it made it stronger, but it was never deactivated. But it made it stronger. That's what neir made it stronger. Others say Rashi makes another shot that neir means that it loses. You shake off. The word neir means shaking off. You shake off its original status. You shake off the original status, and it joins the other wine and becomes one and now became usher. Then the water falls into the story. Now you need shishim against the whole thing. Ike the masculine, so some the same thing, but instead of learning it on the comment on Rabin, on Avdimi, Ike the mas on Rabin, Ike the masculine on the Sisin on the Mishnah comment. Yain b'yain koshu. It says the Mishnah yain is a koshu, but not when it goes with water. If water didn't fall in. If water fell in, if water fell in, we imagine that the kosher wine is non-existent. All you have is the yain nesach and water. Min be'ein and min shishim. The water that comes, it counts it. What's the difference? Which way you learn? The master is the way that's a comment on the Mishnah that if there's water there, not in the head is not there. Or the master is Robin. Or you look at Robin, so the water. Man, the master must be saying, the one that makes comment on the Mishnah doesn't care when the water came out. Even the water came in afterwards. If the yain nesach came in first and joined with the yain heter, then water comes in. We still imagine that the yain heter is not there, and all you have is yain nesach will cast it. But man, the master the Robin, one was on the Robin, you need that the water should come in first. Otherwise, what's Robin's chiddush? You need the water coming first before the yain, because if the yain nesach came in first and it joined the yain heter, they became now one unit. And the water comes in, you need shishim against the whole. Okay, this is a part of Shabbos' Gemara as well, half of it. And